on this telephone conversation was they should have been in a skiff. It's a room that you have to leave all communication devices outside the room. You can't have any communication devices within the room. And all of the material in the room gets collected and put in a locked safe with a specific combination that nobody knows, except for the owners of that safe. So where they were talking about an airstrike in Yemen, that is clearly top secret, and they should have been in a skiff. All the members who were in the conversation had to be in the same skiff. They can't just communicate in different parts. And these people were just any place on their telephone. Very, very bad.
I hate to be on the other side of something like this, but because the people who were participating were literally all over the world, having them in the same skiff at the same time was unlikely. So I think the idea of doing it through signal, which is at least partially secure, although the Defense Department sent out a memo the day before or the day of this conversation saying you can't do it for highly sensitive discussions. But you can understand why, if it was necessary that all these people be clued in at the same time, why it might have been done. The other question is, why did they need to be clued in at the same time?
They didn't need to be included. There were people that had nothing to do with the airstrike that was being planned and executed at the time. So there was no reason for hardly any of the people who were in this meeting, because it was a general meeting to talk about a whole bunch of things, not necessarily this specific airstrike. It just happened to be one of the things that came up during the meeting.
But I actually think similar to what Bob said, that whatever they were discussing, the practicality of it probably called for doing a chat session that way, because they were all over the place. And the other piece to that is that the Secretary of Defense said that no classified information. He said while he was boarding an airplane that nothing detailed was given out, so no classified information was given out. Don't we want to believe that part?
Not by what was said at the time. They said the planes are in the air. They are going to a specific spot in Yemen to bomb specific things. So if anyone could have intercepted that memo, the planes could have been shot down, or there could have been anti-aircraft.
Well, there was another interesting piece of it that we're learning about now. One of the reasons for doing the strike was that they found out that a key member of the Houthi organization was going to be at a specific place at a specific time. And they got confirmation in the middle of the meeting that the person was there, which meant, by the way, that there was eyes on the ground. And it turns out that that piece of information was provided by Israeli intelligence. So what they've done is they've burned someone in Yemen who could provide key information. So not only did they put the strike itself at risk, because they told people that something was coming at a specific time, going to a specific place, but they also sacrificed key human intelligence. So however you want to look at it, if you if this information happened to get into the wrong hands early enough, the success of the mission could have been compromised, and B, the participants of the mission could be compromised. So I think that qualifies as serious problem. And oh, by the way, finally, after a couple of days, it was just announced that some staffer was canned because he put the journalist on the chat. Now, it's not clear if he put him on by mistake or was told to put him on and he's the sacrificial lamb. But somewhere along the line, this whole idea that this is all made up, there was nothing sensitive, etc., doesn't pass the smell test.
Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you also have to, I mean, I'm just being looking at it differently, that given that they did not say where the planes were originating from and which actual specific targets were there, although they said Houthis, but I don't think, as far as I know, the exact locations were not mentioned, and exact location from where the planes were taking off were not mentioned either. So you had to put a lot of moving parts together to figure out.
They were taking part. The planes were taking off from a ship, which they knew, and
but that was not mentioned, though. That's what I'm saying.
And they were going to a specific place where this fellow, who they were after, was known to be. And so, if some party got a hold of this information, they could have warned them.
Right. As far as not mentioning a specific location, if you and I in this Zoom conference agreed that I was going to meet at your house, but I didn't give an address, but somebody knew your name, they could figure out what your address was. So in order to make something confidential, you've got to hide a great deal. Because these are reasonably intelligent people with reasonable amount of information. For example, we don't have 1,000 warships capable of putting up fighter bomber jets around Yemen. There's probably at most one or two. So you have a very good idea of where they're starting and where they're going. So if I had a little bit of time, I could put my anti-aircraft in a position to intercept them, where if there was a surprise, if there was no knowledge beforehand, it wouldn't be true. So,
but maybe Houthis do not have that much of capability to intercept like that. That's another thing. Maybe they know that I don't know.
They do have anti-aircraft capability.
No, but I'm saying with that kind of a precision that what it demands in this hurried bombing sprees.
And they do.
I don't know.
And they do know where the guy is, so they know the aircraft were coming after him. So it would be pretty simple to set up. They didn't set it up, but they could have if they got the information. And
within that much time.
Wasn't that much time, no.
Right. And if you know where to look, you don't necessarily have to move the weaponry around. You just point the radar. You know when they're coming within a reasonable period of time, and you know what direction they're coming from. You can probably figure out what to do about it.
Now that actually brings me to another entirely different question: is how did Houthis accumulate so much of sophisticated armory there? Who are actually the suppliers to this outfit?
Iran and Russia?
And they make some of their own. The Houthis are in fact in charge of a nation state. It may not be a very rich one, it may not be a very powerful one, but because it's a government, it has a lot of capabilities and some money.
Yeah.
But I
Do
thought
they
they
have
were
oil
fighting
from-
amongst themselves. Aren't they fighting amongst themselves there?
Yeah, but
So
the opposition is not in a position to really interfere very much. They've basically been beaten. The Houthis have taken control of the government and a good percentage of the territory. The fact that there's somebody still shooting is immaterial. It's kind of like Lebanon. Lebanon was a nation state. It was pretty poor. It was in the middle of a long-standing battle, but they could still do a fair amount of stuff because they were a nation. They had a government, and they had a lot of interaction with other governments. So, what I have not seen, and this is my fault, not anybody else's, I had not seen that after the ceasefire of Hamas and Israel, that the Houthis had continued to harass ships in the Red Sea. Maybe they did, I don't know.
Well, they've been doing it for years.
Not that, well,
They've been
A
coming
year.
out of Yemen to harass the ships, and that was long before the attack on Israel.
okay, I didn't realize that. At first I heard of that kind of attack was after October.
They were boarding ships and they were sinking ships that were in the
Oh, no,
Suez
a lot
Canal.
of that was coming out of, not Sudan.
Yemen.
No, before,
Sy-
it's further up.
Syria?
No, it was, it had been part of Ethiopia and broke off.
Somalia? Somalia?
Somalia.
Yeah,
The Somalian pirates is what I had been hearing about. I
Yes,
hadn't heard
I
about
mean, so-
Yemen until after the Hamas attack.
I mean, Somalian piracy has been around for a long time,
Right.
and even during when Washington was around. So it's long time because they had to go after Somalian pirates even at that time. So I don't know why it has not subsided. And then now you have the Yemenis people.
But in any case, you got, even if they didn't do anything, the fact that they had been doing something and threatening shipping was a major threat, and I understand why people would go after it. Although, interestingly enough, in part of the conversation that we're talking about, Vance, the vice president, said, I don't know if we should be doing this now because we're helping out Europe and we could be getting something for that help. So in other words, helping your friends is not something that you do because they're friends, you do because they pay you.
Well,
And
that's
I like that even less than all the other factors.
Yeah.
but at least you can see there was a discussion going on.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a good thing. At least there's a discussion and conversation.
true.
Even given the circumstances.
Well, it's been resolved. Some staffer has been fired after a week of saying nothing happened and there was nothing wrong and everything was good. They fired some staffer, so now we can go back to normal. And
Okay.
Yeah.
what normal isn't clear. Since we were talking about some of the current events, one of the things that I wanted to talk a little bit about was the whole idea of the dismantling of the federal government. And the first obvious one to be talking about, given the age of the people involved in the discussion, is Social Security. What appears to be happening, although some of the things that were announced are being drawn back, but what appears to be happening is that we're saying Social Security is a Ponzi scheme. Almost everybody but us three who are getting Social Security are getting it under false pretenses, and the best way to find out who is the fraudster, and this is a quote from, basically what was said by the Commerce Secretary this week, that if you miss a check, Social Security check, and you complain about it, you're a fraudster. Because everybody else, yeah, you miss a check or two, no big deal. So one of the things they're going to do is basically force people to, if there's any change in anything they're doing, to go to an office. They're going to reduce the number of offices so that it will be difficult to get to. They're going to reduce the number of people processing these questions, or etc. So you might have to wait months to even ask your question, but let's get it resolved. And those who complain are fraudsters, and those who don't complain either died, at which point, look at all the money we saved, or are, they'll get their money eventually.
Yeah. One lady went to it was on the news today, one lady did go to a Social Security office and say, "I am not dead."
Yeah.
No, I'm not dead.
And they said we couldn't process that.
I am not dead yet.
Is that a real story?
Yeah, today.
Oh.
There was a guy that I read
Was a
about
lady,
yesterday who did,
I don't know,
who had the same kind of
not in
thing.
Boston, not in Massachusetts, but somewhere out in the hinterland.
Well,
And-
the thrust is, I mean, you can see there are good intentions to cut down what they call the fat, so that you reduce the workforce, which is a good thing in a way that nobody has tried that. But at the same time, they have to do it in a judicious way to make sure that the veterans get their benefits, veterans get their care, and the elderly folks who are on the verge, they also get care until that time and get their checks,
Yeah.
which they are entitled to.
And to prove I am not dead, I'm still paying taxes.
Yes, but I mean, that's supposed to be happening anyway, that you got to be paying taxes. And if you don't pay taxes, they come after you to find out.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, was a way of proving that you're not dead.
Yes, that way you can prove that, yeah. Well, there was the doctor in New Hampshire who held out, he said, "This is my castle, I'm not going to pay taxes." I don't know what happened to that guy.
He's dead.
What's that? Yeah, he held out in his house.
Suddenly.
But-
He's dead suddenly. No,
But,
I'm kidding.
It's the attitude, as much as anything else, that bothers me. The idea that we're going to do it our way, and this whole idea of the big dig. Remember the big dig? The
Yes.
big problem with the big dig was you were creating a new road right in the middle of a city where the old road had to stay open. So it complicated things, it made things unbelievably expensive. If the government had been really smart, they would have torn down the city of Boston, and then they could have built exactly what they wanted, very simply, very easily, no problems. Social Security is being remade. Not clear what the new rules are, but it's being remade. Unfortunately, the three of us still need to get our checks.
Yes. Well, I hope their printing system, well, it's no longer printed. Well, there are printing systems as well. You need them. And also the communication systems are supposedly intact. The Excel sheets are intact, or whatever databases they use.
Well,
And so that the money can flow back and forth. And
but they believe that the money is flowing to the wrong place. When I used to get my Social Security check, physical check,
yes,
it would come in my name to my house. In theory, when I took it to the bank, everybody agreed that the process was good. When I made the horrible mistake of direct deposit, now it can go anywhere. And I understand the potential problem. But it turns out that, at least according to the Social Security Administration, a half of a percent is of the checks going out in a fraudulent way. If you eliminate that half percent by eliminating 10% of the recipients, think of all the money you're going to save.
Yeah.
but that's what the Social Security wanted, that they wanted online payments.
It's cheaper.
That's
for
what they
them.
wanted, direct deposit system.
It's-
And which is faster, cheaper, but also cheaper because they don't have to mail it.
Right.
They don't have to
Right.
print.
Yes.
Look how much money is saved in that.
But there's fraud. And 1% of fraud is far worse than losing 10% of your recipients because they starved to death or they were left
Okay.
out in the cold instead of being in a nursing home.
Well, they will disappear. That's the end.
Yeah. The biggest problem with Social Security is the fact that the three of us lived too long.
I mean, that's the flaw. Actually, you're right.
And along with Medicare, if we didn't have those things, we'd all be dead now, and the
Yeah.
finances would be in excellent shape. I hope that people who are watching this take note.
Well, Social Security is originally it was set up in a way. Actually, that was the plan. Actually, the 65 was the cutoff, and people were not living longer than they were living a few years beyond. So everybody, it was a win-win situation, so that you didn't pay out for a long time. But things have changed.
Yeah.
So
The
policies have to be changed. They have to be revised.
So there was a science fiction book, I think by Theodore Sturgeon, but I'm not sure of that, where in a future world, everyone had to be dead by 65. So if
Oh.
you were 64 and a half, it was traditional for you to go do a trip and enjoy yourself because at
And never come
65
back.
they were going to kill you. And
Wow.
we should seriously consider that because think of all the money we'd save.
Wow. Did the science fiction writer set up some kind of implosions in everybody who was 65?
They turned themselves in and they died.
Oh, they had to turn themselves in. I see.
Well, if you didn't turn yourself in, somebody had the job of going to find you because they knew however old people were. So they knew to watch.
Well, it's hard to tell where all the old people are, but at least we know where Trump is.
True. Actually, we got to be careful. We're both older than he is. But I mean,
All right.
well, success is a very interesting concept. One of the things I had hoped to talk about this evening, which we probably don't have time for anymore, was to define what is government supposed to do, who is it supposed to do it for, and then you are in a position to judge whether you're doing a good job or a bad job. And oh, by the way, even figure out what areas you might want to improve on. Maybe at some point in the future we'll do that.
Yeah, maybe a future saga.
Right.
But right now, I think Paul had another topic to talk about. Actually, that was what was the tariffs.
Yeah, the tariff. Basically, you know,
See, you have a docket.
I just did no tariff and 20% tariff. And what does it do to inflation? At least inflation of the goods and services where that are subject to the tariff. I started out with a fictitious item that costs $100. The tariff is $20, so now it's $120, and compared to the original is $100. There's a profit for the importer. He has to pay the extra. He has to pay the extra $20, and then he also wants profit on that. Then it goes to the shipper and eventually to the end user, and it ends up being on this particular product. It's an inflation of 20% or more, and because you have to do detailed mathematics to figure out how much more. But it's the end user buyer is going to pay 20% more for the product, for the same product they got yesterday. So the inflation goes up by 20%, and if depending upon how many products get tariffed, then you need 20% more money to pay for all of the products you're buying. So that's where, as in Social Security comes. We're getting a Social Security check, so they should go up by 20%. I don't think the government's going to be very happy about that one.
Well, it's not even the government. Since Social Security is not a government program, it's self-funded. All the people who are paying my Social Security and Paul's Social Security will have to either pay more or assume that there will be no security when they get to this age. So, and it's even worse than what Paul was outlining. If you're importing something and it ends up costing 20% more, so the vendor charges an extra 20% to cover the cost so they can still make a profit, which, by the way, is important, because if they're not making a profit, why should they do it in the first place? But all the people who aren't importing, who do a similar product or the same product, but they make it here, will raise their prices, because if people are willing to spend $20 more, if they charge $18 more, then it's still cheaper. People will buy their product, and suddenly this American vendor will make 18% more than they were making before for doing nothing. And the only, go ahead.
For not.
I mean, you're talking about a linear, straight line logic there, but the problem is that humans are not straight liners. What happens is we are complicated. That means if something costs more, there will be similar type of consumption what was happening before the tariffs. Under those circumstances, how many people will still be able to afford the same product if it costs 20%, 25% more than what it cost yesterday? So maybe the consumption will decrease. In that way, what I'm thinking is it may not necessarily cause inflation, as Paul pointed out. It may become reverse. I'm wondering, under those circumstances, will that mean that some of the goods that are produced or brought in here no longer will have users, no longer will have consumers to really go out there and buy? Why should they buy a BMW while as a Ford might, well, some of the Fords that are really built here, not all the Fords are built here, but that even if that costs more, they may actually not buy a car as frequently as they used to do that before the tariffs. I'm kind of wondering, will that psychology play in the long run?
Yes,
in the U.S. consumers.
of course. The other thing is that tariffs are for protection of products that are made within your country, and to make the ones that are outside the country so much higher. You want to continue to buy the ones made inside the country, even though they might be inferior. So it's a disaster for people who want to sell in the United States, sell products to the United States, and it helps people who are making those very same products in the United States. So it's a protectionism type of thing, not a means for the government to raise money. It's to protect local industries. That's the reason for tariffs.
Well, no, originally tariffs were a way to make money. If you go back before 1890, or before 1914, I'm sorry, when they made income tax legal, the government was funded by tariffs.
Oh.
So, and supposedly, I haven't had the conversation with Donald Trump, so I don't know that, but he often has been saying how wonderful things were under McKinley, where the government was funded by tariffs, and you didn't need income tax, and how much better, how much cheaper things were, blah, blah, blah. So I don't think it is possible to run the government as we know the government to be today under that system. The whole idea of the FDA saying, hey, we've tested this, and for most people, this is going to do what we claim it to do. Before that, your medicine came, in many cases, from some guy riding in with a wagon saying, I have this thing, it was made out of snake oil, and it will cure everything. And people bought it.
Because that was the only choice at that time.
Well,
and you had his word. And he would produce his evidence.
Evidence wasn't required. He said. There's
But
nobody
that's
else.
what he said. He produced his evidence. That is his word.
Yes. And so this whole FDA thing, which, by the way, Trump just announced, or someone just announced today, that they're cutting 3,500 people from the FDA.
Okay. Well, FDA is also, actually, in a way, some of the FDA are funded by drug companies, because when a drug company sends out a new drug application, they have to submit some fees along with it to make sure it is reviewed. I don't know how much the fee is, but there is a fee attached to all the applications, so that some of the work is funded by that endeavor.
Right. There's some of that. The paperwork involved in a new drug application is amazing. Many years ago, I was involved with Astra Pharmaceuticals, and we were trying to figure out how to get the paperwork necessary to the FDA. And before we got involved in it, it was a truckload, a trailer truckload of paper.
Yes.
And we managed to get it onto digital things, which obviously a hell of a lot smaller. But it is a massive amount of stuff that is required, and not only is it required for the FDA to look at all this stuff, that paperwork documents testing and everything else that goes into it, so that I'm lactose intolerant. If something has milk in it, what is that going to do to me? And I need to know it. I need to know it before I start taking the drug, not after.
Yes. Yeah, you do need, although the truckloads are not there, but these are virtual truckloads still.
Yes.
But there are you still need qualified personnel who can actually look at the data, interpret it, and then make thoughtfully thought through and intellectually rigorous decisions about what the so-called medication is going to do, and who are the people who it will affect adversely, and who are the people who will be benefited. All that has to be done very, very carefully, and that needs personnel, qualified personnel. And I agree with you there that maybe there are extra people there, but I don't know. But you do need people.
Right. And we're getting more into the political portion of this thing. The whole idea of let's burn down the house and then see who complains, because some of the things, like in the Social Security, they announced that they weren't going to have any more phone capability. If you wanted to make any changes or even register for Social Security, you had to do it in person. A lot of screaming and yelling went on. There must be an awful lot of prostitutes out there. And they announced today that at least short term, they're not going to eliminate the phone service. They're eliminating all the people who man the phone service, but you can still call.
Oh, I mean, I remember talking to Social Security people over the phone, but they called back. That was about what? Called back, took about 45 minutes for them to call back. But there was a person who talked to me. So that was good. That was nice, actually. So there was somebody who really understood what I wanted to get from them.
Right. I'm a lack of anything better, I'm a coupon nut. I shop to save money, and in order to get rid of all these inexpensive things that I get, I shop for elderly shut-ins. And periodically, for one reason or another, something goes wrong, and I have to contact somebody to get it fixed. Has anybody tried to go through phone systems now? Help for your cable. Hey, my cable's out.
Yeah.
Call this number. And you go through a whole range of things, AI,
Yes.
and it goes around in a circle because it doesn't understand your question.
Yes.
That's what they want to substitute for human interaction. Now, maybe at some point, the AI will get better. I hope it will. But up until then, so I apologize. It's my current rant.
Well, I know your rant because I wanted to change something. I called up to reduce my cable bill by eliminating some particular things, and I wanted to add one more thing. It went up by $10. So I went to the mall to talk to the people at Verizon, but they only handle telephones. You know, not telephones, but they only handle cell phones.
Cell phones.
This thing, you know, and I don't know how I can get in touch with Verizon to reduce my bill, because I'm getting tons of things that I don't want to pay for, and it's just costing a lot of money. I've never watched any of these special channels, but they're on there anyway.
So you want to get rid of them?
Yes. And there's nobody to talk to until I can figure out where. Maybe I'll have to go to New Jersey to talk to Verizon. I don't know.
Is that where they are?
AT&T used to be down there.
Okay.
Some, but They certainly are very capable of sending out the bill every month.
Yes.
Yes. But I thought they had a chat system as well on their website. On their website.
I've tried that, and not necessarily with Verizon. I have Comcast, but if you don't say things in the way that the AI understands, then it gets confused. And as with most things in computers, when you get thoroughly confused, what you do is turn it off and turn it back on. So the chat thing starts over again.
It is possible to call them directly, and I did talk to a man and tell him what I wanted to do, and after a half an hour, I was able to add the thing I wanted, but all things I wanted to eliminate weren't. So that's why it went up by $10.
I see. Okay.
But
They like the plus, but they don't like the minus part.
yeah,
Reasonable.
and
Yeah.
I
From their
I
standpoint.
was on the phone. I was on the phone, actually physically on the phone for half an hour, and my bill went up by $10.
Well, if you were, so thank God you were only on. You were only talking for about a half hour. If you had
Well-
talked for more, that means they would have surcharged you $20 a month.
Well, no. I didn't talk for a half an hour. I talked.
You were on.
I
Well-
talked for less than 5 minutes, but I was on the phone for a half an hour because he
okay,
would
so
go
that
away
means-
and come back minutes later.
So for half hour, $10. So 1 hour, $20. Or maybe, I don't know, it's exponential or linear, I don't know. That is really strange. You need to get back to them, actually.
Well, actually, I'm
Not
impressed
on your life.
that you were on the phone with somebody for 5 minutes, because I have waited or called multiple times, as the case may be, all day and not gotten 5 minutes of conversation. Not with Verizon, because again, I don't have Verizon for my TV, but others, and it will only get worse because AI is so much cheaper than a human being.
Yeah.
But do you think it's going to get better? Given that the way AI is going,
It'll get better in terms of them understanding what it is you're trying to say. Whether it will get better in terms of producing results, in part depends upon what the corporation wants.
The corporation
Okay.
got exactly what they wanted. They increased my bill by $10.
That's my point.
yes, exactly. That's the point, actually.
It's one of the things that I do. I hate to do this and admit it in public because somebody will use it against me, but I'm very old when it's convenient.
Oh. You are very old when it is convenient.
Yes.
I like that phraseology. It's confusing for a second, but then I realize what you're saying.
Yeah. So AI can be as smart or as stupid as necessary.
As designed.
As designed.
But-
But I get it that we will have to wait for some time to really make sure that they understand us.
And we
The
understand
bots.
them. AI
We understand them.
is passing information on as well, and it's not always clear what it is they're trying to say. So, but in any case, it's very frustrating, and I'm very sympathetic to what Paul went through. A little jealous that he was successful, sort of.
You mean only 10 minutes, only $10 more?
Yeah,
Where I was trying to reduce it by 30 or 40?
but you
Wow.
got your new thing, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Okay, see, partially successful. Everyone's
There is
happy.
There's a winning portion there.
Yeah. Getting back to kind of where we were, inflation is by definition the price of things going up. The reaction to inflation can be a variety of things. Number one, you just pay it, and you bitch and moan about how much things cost. Number two, you use less, and you bitch and moan about the fact that I used to be able to have 2 eggs for breakfast, and now I'm lucky to have 1 every other day. 3, you find a substitute. Inflation, the price is still higher. So by definition, it's inflation. And we have not, despite somebody being elected because they said, on day one, I will deal with inflation. We haven't resolved it. Inflation is going up. And oh, by the way, while we're at it, we've increased unemployment significantly. And it will only get worse. So if I were to go back and start talking about what is it the government is supposed to do, I think I would find that, at least for the moment, it may be that in 5 years, what Trump claims to be doing will work. All of the essential things will come and be done here in the United States, and we will find all the raw materials necessary to build this stuff, and we won't know or care about anyone outside of the United States. So all the industries that produce things that are consumed outside of the United States will basically go away, but we won't be importing anything, so that will be better. I question, number one, that that's how things will work out, and number two, what happens in the 3 to 5 or 10 years that it'll take for everything to be readjusted.
Well, the rosy scenario you brought up is, and that looks good, if actually most of the materials that we consume here are produced within the country, it will be good that way. But at the same time, the competition will, unless there is competition, the quality controls will not evolve. And so the inferiority of the products can set in. But at the same time, that means we will not worry about the rest of the world. And we will keep everything inside and be producing things ourselves. And the industry comes back and everybody is happy.
If that's the case, I think we are finding that perfect example, oil. Remember, drill baby drill has been Trump's mantra for 10 years. Many of the oil wells that have been producing oil from the 1800s on are drying. They're running out. So the more we pump, the quicker they're going to run out. And then we're going to have to go somewhere else for our oil.
Well, we already do.
Well, yeah, but that's
the oil. The oil we have that gets converted to gasoline, so we can run our cars, is produced in Saudi Arabia. The oil that we have in the United States does not get refined; it gets shipped out, because it's not. We don't have the refineries right now to refine that oil.
And part of the reason we don't have the refineries now to do that oil is that the private corporations that run the refineries are saying it makes more sense to ship it out.
Yes.
We're going to, Alaskan oil, for example, does not in large measure go to refineries down in Los Angeles. It goes to China and Japan because it's a lot cheaper for the oil companies. So if we produce more oil in Alaska, we're producing oil for Japan and China, not for us.
But doesn't that some of that gas come back then here or no?
I don't think so. I don't know. I don't believe so.
No, the gas. Our refineries import oil from Saudi Arabia to refine for gasoline for our cars.
Yeah, because that petroleum is a different grade, and the refineries are set up for that. Is that
Yes.
what you're saying?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
The
I don't
oil,
know. They talk about sweet something, sweet Brent or whatever the grades are. I don't remember all of that detail.
Yeah, I know because a number of years ago when there was fighting going on in Libya, it's an oil producing country. It doesn't produce that much, but that oil is great for aviation fuel.
Oh.
So it was important to Europe particularly that get resolved because that was good for aviation fuel. Yeah, the right tool for the right job. You can use a sledgehammer to pound in a small nail to put up your picture. It's probably not the most efficient way to do things.
So in the long run, then even though we are producing a lot of oil and we produce most of the stuff inside the country, we will still depend on other countries for various essential commodities, no matter what.
Yeah. If you like to have orange juice in the winter, you need to get that orange juice from someplace other than Florida and California because that's not when they grow it.
Yes.
You can probably do without orange juice and take vitamin C pills, but that's an adjustment.
But that means that vitamin C pill has to be produced here.
Yeah, but I can produce that in advance. If I want an orange in January or February, there's really no practical way to store it other than via juice.
Well, those are the practical issues that will show up.
Yeah, and then the other thing, which we sort of imply when we talk about inflation, is standard of living. What do I have in my normal life? And let's say I can get what I consider an acceptable standard of living for $100. Makes the math easy. If you increase the cost of things, either I have to come up with an extra $20 using Paul's example, or I have to cut back. And that's, at some point, somebody who has some authority, not total authority, but some authority, has to make that decision. And I don't think the American people are the problem is being explained to them in that way. Everybody's pissed about inflation. Salaries are going up, but not the same rate as inflation, particularly during COVID. So they're going to somebody who says, I'll fix it. They never said how. It turns out he didn't have a quick fix, but he was going to fix it. And everybody else is trying to explain the problem to people as if they had some measure of understanding. Maybe that's the big problem. Maybe just deal with emotion and forget all this crap about people understanding how things actually work.
Yeah, and I'll fix it. I'll make you do it with less.
Okay, at least I kind of understand it. Not necessarily, but kind of.
I mean, that's what I implied earlier when I talked about how inflation. You rightly pointed out inflation will be there, but I will buy less. So naturally, I will live at a lower standard of living and get by whatever I can, unless I have those $20 more. So this is basically what as human behavior will dictate that, because of how much of resources I got and how much resources it takes to maintain that standard of living. that those things may not match. Naturally, the human behavior is to cut the costs at the domestic level, and accordingly, the standard of living may continue to drop.
Yeah. That $20 more you want to spend on additional things as opposed to, trying to just catch up to what you used to.
Way back when Reagan was running against Mondale, 1984, Reagan said, and this guaranteed his election, "Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?"
Yeah.
And the answer was, yeah. And they ignored the fact, and Mondale tried to explain, but nobody would listen. Yeah, you're better off because now your wife is working and your kids are in daycare, as opposed to you could earn a living to support your family by yourself.
Well, that is where our emotions play a big part, because when you are trying to explain all that, that means my brain has to work more, and that hurts, and it takes more work. I'm not going to go into all that. I want a simple solution.
Well, so what is the answer? Promise somebody a simple solution, and then once you get in the position to make all the decisions, start a fire over here to the right, so that they are spending their time worrying about that instead of what it was you promised them.
Well, they got to do something. I mean, that means the reality sets in when you are sitting in the chair, and then find out that it's not basically the problem is the way it is, and you can't just whistle it away.
Yep.
Okay. One more topic.
How are we doing for time?
Tell you the truth, I don't know.
2 minutes more.
2 minutes more.
Oh, boy.
Okay. Is it better to have friends or enemies or people who just tolerate you?
Depends on who you are and what your goals are. I mean, that's basically how human behavior works. I'm not a behavioral psychologist, but I dealing with all the different people I know, everybody has a different goal, and they assess the situation according to what they want, not what I want. They assess what they want from me, and accordingly adjust their things to extract or cajole or ask friendly way. Depends on who they are, and that also depends on how easy it is to coerce other folk based on who you are. I mean, that's what in India they talk about, how if you have a bull running around in the village, and they say, whose is it? And the question is, the answer is, it belongs to the person who has the larger stick, because otherwise everybody is running around afraid of the bull, and so the person with the larger stick owns the bull. So might is right. If you are in power, you decide what has to be done. And accordingly, the methodology they will devise, hopefully for the good.
Well, again, what is good?
That's a big topic.
Well,
Paul has an answer to that.
What is good is in the mind of the person who's observing.
yeah.
You know,